Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Mecky.
Thank heavens for that. We are broadcasting live from the Sydney studios in Australia. Join us in the freedomslips.com chat room. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Get our show notes and all of the links we paste into the chat during the show at shinysideout.net. So very precisely there. Get connected to Revolution Radio another way because it's on air, online, and on your smart device. If you live in Kentucky, tune in on FM 101.3 WZZR. Use one of these apps to listen. TuneIn.com Radio Central. Web Radio Central. Receiver mobile app. Freedom Slips Mobile. TalkStream Live, Stream Finder, internet-radio.com, Radio Tuner, Radio Ways, RadioOnline.co, or our app, Shiny Side Out. Just check that one out in your app provider. At home on a Grace tabletop digital radio or driving around in a General Motors vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio. All are revolutions in radio. You know what? freedomslips.com is not only a radio station, but it's a central hub for all your information. Check the links at the bottom of the homepage. Buy a CD of your favorite show's 2014 season or 15 season for only $34.95 US dollars, or $39.95 if you are living outside of the continental USA. Or you can donate and receive a gift back in return. Yay! Is either a USB stick with 75 tons of documents or 75,000 seed pack. Follow the instructions. Check out the website's details for more information when donating. But be careful to follow instructions. Earth to Mecky.
Well, probably better than you, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You should be able to hear me. Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Right, here we are. No, nothing wrong on my end, I'm hoping, but from what I'm hearing is I probably feel better than you, as I do not have a headache, at least not too bad a one. But it's been an interesting week. It's been a sad week. I've done a lot of research, which I've shown you as well, very odd stuff. Solaris' guest was in fact Christopher P. Garetano, but I also must confess that I missed the show. I went to I think a third or fourth birthday party and I just got home in the nick of time by the hair on my chins. But and all that, Dr. Zeus and so forth. I have to confess. I have to confess something, Dave. I am actually terrified of today's topic. Before we go into some news, I think I want to say this at the start of the show. I'm actually terrified of this particular topic, so I have softened it. Right, Dave and I have decided to approach it slightly differently. It is 20 years since the Port Arthur incident, where 35 people were killed. Yes. And 26 wounded. We will talk about that. I don't know if we have time today. Maybe we will, but the show notes are extensive, and we're talking about fear. We're going to talk about fear today, guys. Fear, primal emotion. But the reason I'm terrified is because of the topic at hand, and this is the way fear is used, and the seeming callousness of maybe the elite, maybe someone else. Exactly, that's the one to perpetrating the things there. I did a lot of research. I looked at Sandy Hook, which I found extremely disturbing. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that isn't quite right either. So, and it's a very dark subject. It's probably the closest we come to something that hits home for us here in Australia, or anyone for that matter, right? When your loved ones are threatened, it's a scary thing. we will talk about Sandy Hook as well, and we will talk about a few other things and a whole bunch of misconceptions that are out there. We've done the research and we've got the statistics. we've got the facts to back us up. So any debunkers out there, please feel free to call in and tell us where we got it wrong. Other than this, though, I'm between business trips. Yay, I'm in Australia. So that's a good thing, Dave. See my family and make sure my daughter still remember my face. Right, that's important.
Who is that man?
Exactly. Who? I would also like to say one thing. Next week in Sydney is the annual. It's a breast cancer awareness run, if you will, and then we, the Shiny Side Out, is sponsoring a trophy in that event. So if you're a Sydney Sider or you happen to be listening to this show and you're going to maybe go to the park, I think it's in Hyde Park. Sorry, I think Hyde Park is where it starts. Could be the domain, I'm not sure.
It's
but
funny,
the point is,
because I'll be walking around trying to find it, of course.
Yeah, that's right. So just come down. Dave will be there to award the trophy that we're sponsoring.
Mm-hmm.
It's worthwhile thing. It's something the Shiny Side Out likes to do because we can. If you can give money to the station, that would also be a good thing, right? If you could do that, because the station only exists because of you, the listener, right? We bring you information that hopefully you find interesting and enlightening. In return, we'd like for you to donate a little, a lot, whatever you can spare. It does cost money to run the station, believe it or not, right? It does cost money, and we're very close to the goal for the month, but we're not quite there yet. Right? Your donation, in fact, could push us across. But Dave, tell me about your week. You are troubled? Do you have headaches and such?
Oh no, just today. I just don't know where it's come from, and it's blinding. I've had 3 Panadols. Trying to get
dehydration.
No, it's not. My skin reacts normally. Despite the headache, I've spoken to a number of friends of mine during this last week, and we've talked. We've spoken about that sheeple thing, Mackie. I'm trying to get. Yes. I'm trying to get the answer, and it's been very difficult to pin down what it is about people that just simply don't want to know or don't want to believe it. I think so far it's boiling down to not wanting to believe that there is anything wrong anywhere, because once you know that people are living on the belief that all of this system has integrity, the governments are honest, that all of these things that we've already gone through, we're in acceptance now. We don't like it, but we've completely understood that they're not. That for as far back as you can hope to go back through records, governments all around the planet have been acting on their own behalf, not the people's behalf, not the voted in behalf. That the elected officials, whether they're elected or it's an oligarchy, or whether it's it's back in the feudal system, echoes of this are everywhere, and we see lie after lie after lie told to the people. Even in some, in the dictatorships, they're living in mansions with gold taps. Yeah, while the people starve to death. Now, I know people don't want to know that. We live in, the first world countries, and it's difficult for anyone who's living in one of those to believe that kind of thing is still going on. And yes, I so get it. But if anyone ever wants to talk to me about any of those, any of my friends or anyone else for that matter, I'm happy to fill you in, but I want you to ask the questions. I'll answer them. Because Meckie and I, independently of each other, could spend a 24-hour period with that person, and it still wouldn't cover all of the topics. So, Meckie, on the phone, I spent about an hour, and one of my friends asked me a bunch of questions, one after another, quick fire succession. What do you think about this? Is this true? You know, talking about the moon, the JFKs, all of those things that are popular. What about the Illuminati? What about this, Ed? What about that? And kept going. And I went, geez, you've really got, you know, you've been watching all the videos, haven't you? She said, yeah. And went on to say, look, her friend is quite the theorist, and started to ask a lot of questions. And they had, you know, over a couple of wines, she said she felt like she was getting buried by it all. And I said, don't. She goes, but I've got kids. I said, I've got kids. You know, how do you wake up in the morning and think it's going to be great? I said, I'm in acceptance. You have to get past it all. It's always been there. Just your box has now got a hole in the side and you're peering out. I love that image, by the way, in the show notes. Right? That is what everyone has to do first. I said, you're making the right steps, but don't fear it, because fear is what's got us there. Fear is the mechanism, that's a segue. Fear is the mechanism that they use to keep us there. Meckie's talked about this at length, I know, and look, it's surprising still today to hear someone question it. When I say, for instance, you know, we have our own local issues here where I live. Land was discussed as a democracy with our local council. The land was decided that if it was going to be sold, if a school next to the waterfront was going to be sold and its land was going to be repurposed, what would the purpose of that land ultimately be best used in our community for? And there was a list, and the list boiled down, and it got down to this, you know, it must have 700 multi-use car spaces. It must have, you know, a performing arts centre. It must retain the Anzac Day Memorial with the poppies and everything, which they're planted there. It's beautiful, right? This is a beautiful piece of land, and as soon as it was sold, suddenly the state government, who ultimately would own it, but the local government are responsible for the first contact with the patrons, us, the ratepayers, decided to change the spec after it was sold. But hang on, you can't do that, you see, because we all agreed the only reason it would be sold was if we were all on board. And how you can't change the rules now? Oh yeah, we can. And they did. Not only that, Meckie, but it was a land grab. Now the federal government has decided to put their own thing on a part of that land too. But and under what we call the Crown. The Crown, you can't stop the Crown from developing a piece of land. But once it became available, they've done that. And now what was meant to be grand is now whittled away to there being insufficient you know, area left for us to have what we agreed upon. Is that revolting? It's revolting to me. But I know that we live in a country at least where we had a discussion. If we were living, I'm going to go on the other side of the fence. If we're living in China, you don't own any land. The government can just do whatever they want with it. It's theirs, not yours. So, Meckie, I do respect where we are in this, yeah? But in this democracy where we had discussion and it was agreed upon, they've changed their side of the story now. And there was meant to be local jobs. There's no local jobs anymore. That's just, you can't have that because that's the tax office that now is moving in for some reason. Yeah? So it all, and they're moving them here. It's just terrible. And I pity anyone who's in a position where their land is being sold for mining, or where the government has decided to give it to someone else. If you've ever had your land taken from you at a preposterously low value for a road construction and offered no alternative, or you've just been relocated for no reason in public housing. Yeah? I feel for you. I really do.
This is the thing, though, Dave, and you said something very interesting. You said at least we seem to have a discussion. Yes, we do. That is true. However, at least the Chinese are honest about it, right?
Yeah.
You have no rights. I'll take whatever I want for the Six Gorges Dam project.
That's right.
Which was, constructed last century, and at the end of it, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions of people were displaced. Entire towns and villages went underwater. Of course, people got noticed, people were evacuated, but there was no vote. They said, we're going to build this big dam. And you better get your sorry behind out of there.
Yeah,
Because
Mekki, I even know one of my friends who had a family house there that had been owned, they'd thought, for more than 1,000 years.
Wow.
That was the house of 1,000 years ago that they had to move out of.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's now
a lot
underwater.
of things like that would have been lost, which is a horrible thing.
Yep.
But I know people that have been under the Eminent Domain Act here in Australia, meaning essentially you get fair market value. Unfortunately, fair market value is determined, I think, by the Land Council.
By them, not the market.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the thing is this, when you go for an insurance claim, you can actually have 2 or 3 others give you a quote as well. Right? Now, that's what normally happens, right? So you go to 2 or 3 different ones, you get a quote in case your car has got an accident or whatever. Right?
But not in their case, no. That's
For
right.
this, though, there is no second or third opinion. No. But so, look, ultimately, though, what side is the greater good? Well, that's the thing, with democracy and everything should be taken to a vote, and democracy, for the most part, or a just system, shouldn't just protect the rights of the many, but clearly the rights of the few or the one. Otherwise, it's a completely useless system, because if it's the rights of the many, they'll be okay anyway. The many will always be okay because they've got the power on their side, right? The few or the one don't really have that, unless of course, you control the many. And you are the powerful one or few, as we have, of course.
Yes.
And while I didn't want to necessarily segue immediately into today's show's topic, because we can certainly talk about some more news items, it is, in fact, the few, not the one, I don't think, but the few who do control us, who control the planet. And today, we're going to look at one of those control mechanisms. And Dave already said it. It's fear. We're going to look at fear, and we're going to look at manufactured fear. We're going to look at fear in the media. We're going to look at some of the things that cause fear in us. And we're going to ask the question, well, are all of these things real? And what in fact is reality? I mean, in relation to these fears. And we're going to focus specifically on some of the mass shootings of recent years. When I say recent years, within the last 20, 30 years. And we're going to share some statistics with you which might surprise you. Because of the attention that certain things get. They seem to be completely out of proportion to the actual reality, right? So when you hear of a shooting, oh my God, oh no, all Americans are crazy. Well, not really. Not really. I'm going to pick on America because that's where most of our listenership is, but also because clearly that is a perceived problem within your country, the gun control issue and the mass shootings. There are 300 million Americans, Dave, roughly 300 million, right? You cannot compare, and I will go into that in some detail in a second, but you cannot compare America to, say, Belgium or Luxembourg or even Australia when it comes to shooting incidences. Why? Because those countries have a lot less people. The only true comparison, or a sensible comparison, would be with all of Europe. So if you compare the United States of America with all of Europe, okay, now you can look at apples for apples to some extent. Yeah? But no, that's not what's being done. Clearly, America has an issue. No, America actually doesn't have a huge issue, and we'll talk about that as well. There are a few items, though, I think.
Go ahead. I've got a few too. I just wanted to say, you might have noticed that we had a geomagnetic storm, and
yes.
our shields were down for a little bit.
Yes.
Did you know, Mekki, that caused the temperature in China to reach 44.6, an all-time record for China.
Wow.
I can't remember the exact city, but it occurred across a swath of cities in southern China, resulting in 300 dead.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. You see, we don't know this because we're not told this. Our media, because my focus today is on the media and the way that items are cherry picked for your local news, right? The Earth's tilt is going crazy. Apparently, it's heading back to England. If you look at the map, it's done another, about turn. That's a magnetic pole. So the magnetosphere collapse it lasted only a few hours, and in that time, it was sufficient for the sun's energy to, and it happened on our side of the Earth. During that time, we hit, I think, 28 degrees here in almost winter. It's only a couple of weeks left before we hit winter. And we were 12 degrees above average on that day. And in China, they were more than that. So you're going to hear me repeat this over and over throughout our shows, and it's really quite a terrible thing to keep thinking about that, right?
Yes.
America this week announced that they're going to, the government has said, we want more, our skies turned white to reflect more energy. That was an announcement from the government to the geoscience community, saying let's do that. And I've made a few posts this week with that in it, and also the highlighting, Meki, if you remember, the company that is listed on Bloomberg in the stock market for change of the for weather modification, and they, you can buy stock in this company if you wish, but it's advertises that it can change the weather, it can disperse fog. Goodness knows how that happens. Disperse fog. Well, they don't have huge fans, because blowing fog away from you is one way of doing it. They must have some kind of thing that it creates an emission, or maybe EM spectrum, radio waves or something, microwaves, I'm not sure. But they advertise that they can do this, and they're successful at it. And there's a single meteorologist on their panel, on their board. But for the rest of them, they're all, heavy sales and technical people. And if you don't look at that and say, well, they're claiming to do it, they can do it. And there's more than 50 companies within the US alone that are all registered as weather modification companies. And I'm not just talking about cloud seeding. They advertise themselves as being able to create clouds and whiten the sky. That's what we're seeing with the chemtrails. There have been a lot of chemtrail videos out. So, Meki, to you.
Actually, this came from you, in fact. Some very interesting stuff. One was around the show we recently did, the linguistic mysteries. You might have heard, you might remember this, guys. We spent a bit of time on that. Researchers now believe they have found evidence for a almost global language, not including the Americas here, but certainly across Asia and Europe, and seemingly Saudi Arabia, potentially parts of Africa, but certainly for Asia, Europe, and the greater language groups there. And it was meant to have been spoken in the Ice Age, some 15,000 years ago, a super language, a so-called super language. And in fact, we may be able to, or we would be able, if we are of that Indo-European background, if you will, or Asian European background, we would be able to communicate, or at least understand somewhat of that language from 15,000 years ago.
They also said that deeper in the article they'd mentioned that post a meteor impact.
Yep.
And which matches post a meteor impact and the flooding that would have wiped out communities all across the planet. They said that the people on foot who have gathered together would have been able to communicate with all of the exchange language, or the language where you have to, I think they highlighted the I, we, and you. words as being similar, and this language, when you say it phonetically, it even makes sense to you, even though it's not English.
That's correct. That's correct. So 23 common words. 23. That's a lot. Yeah. And in fact, not much changed over the last 20,000 years. So I want to submit here one that goes right in line with our hypothesis, that plays right into our timelines. In fact, when we spoke about language confusion, right? To you guys, we did. And it seems that now there's a scientific timeline there as well as to when that language confusion happened, which is what we said 15 to 20,000 years ago, last ice age, right? So the science is catching up with our hypothesis, Dave, which is fantastic, right? So our hypothesis is moving into the realm of a theory now, because there's a lot of corroborating evidence here. And if there was this super language, right? Let's be very clear here. That wouldn't just happen by itself, because what happens with language, if you've got people isolated, and I'm sorry, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. If you've got people isolated in pockets, very far away, not much travel, not much communication, those languages divert. They just become, different, like French and German and so forth. They're just different languages now. Common ancestry, yes, but very, very different. Now, to have a super language that spanned all of Asia, from Kamchatka to the Iberian Peninsula in Europe, and down into Saudi Arabia as well, and then all the way up to Siberia again. So all of that landmass to have a common language or a super language which was understood everywhere, because that's what we're saying here. Okay, these peoples that lived across this vast expanse of land were speaking a language that was common to all of that area, or so it seems. Maybe like a lingua franca, like Latin used to be. Now, what does that mean? It means there was a lot of travel. It means there was commerce. It means there was probably connected civilization, a connected civilization, not a disparate or disconnected civilization. No, a civilization that in fact was connected in trade, in laws, in customs, who knows, right? But it speaks to a global, or at least, if they're across all of Asia and Europe, we can assume
global
that
contact.
they certainly had their feelers out into the. Say again?
Yeah, global contact. They had global contact with each other.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Right. So this is important. So again, so because if you don't look at it from that point of view, if you take it out of context and go, oh, that's very interesting, then you lose the whole point of it. You must understand what this means, and it does mean exactly that: a global, potentially, civilization 20,000 years ago, with the means to move massive stones, with the means to fly to underwater in the space. Who knows, right? And 20,000 years is a long time, long enough for most of that to have faded into myth. Faded to myth, and that's where we are. So again, this was Dave actually found this piece of this nugget of gold, and so thank you, Dave. But it is important that we realize what this means, or could potentially mean. Yeah, we can't just that's interesting. So with all these languages now, okay, we've talked about it, forget about it. No. Incorporate it into your wider world view. Dave, did you have another interesting item?
Oh yeah, no. In fact, this is a friend of mine went to Angkor Wat. I'm so jealous.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah, and he took like so many photos. It isn't funny. And one of the things that he said that he didn't get a photo of, but now that he thinks about it, he really should have, was on the wall of Angkor Wat, on the petroglyphs carved into the walls, was a depiction of a human and a dinosaur.
Oh, really?
He said,
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's not widely published, but there is one. He said he took photos of lots of the reliefs everywhere, and all of the ones that I saw, and I'll be asking him if we've got permission to use those images that he did take. It's the same styled image of the ruling people at the time, like in ancient Egypt, like in, Angkor Wat, And like in the depictions of the Anunnaki in Sumeria, where they are all at least twice as tall as everybody else.
Right. Yep.
It is the same, Meki. When you see it, you're immediately images of the other sites and the other reliefs go through your mind. You go, how can that be the same? How can the people all have artistically stylized their leaders as being super tall, unless, the way I think, they were?
Yes.
They must have been taller than everybody else. If and then there's more than just the three that I've mentioned. I know this. The 4 or 5 of them that I'm aware of, I can't remember the other two, that all depict their ruling class, their rulers, their leaders, their I don't want to say gods, but the people who enslaved them all. Those people were giants.
Yeah, well, yeah, look, and we have evidence for extremely tall people, races of people. There's both physical evidence as well as legendary evidence. When I say legendary evidence, I mean things that have moved into the status of legends and mythology in certain peoples. And some of the legends are a bit more detailed. They talk about red-headed giants, red-headed, and quite peaceably for the most part, but not always, and certainly a lot taller than most people. So we're talking reaching to the 8-foot mark, 8 foot, 8 foot, almost 2.5 meters here. That's very, very tall. Now, not crazy tall though, right? Because we still have extremely tall people. Now I'm about 6 foot, and makes me taller than average. But on my travels, I come across a whole bunch of different people in different areas, America, Asia, everywhere, right? In Asia, I'm really tall, right? I'm really, really tall. In parts of northern China, I'm not so tall, I'm more average. But in America, I'm not really that tall at all, depending on where I am. And we had a convention of, I think it was volleyball players, Dave, last year in Orlando. They were like, all the schools, all the high schools got together, and I think they have some kind of cup in Orlando. But anyway, there was like, maybe 20, 30 classes of schoolgirls, probably in the late teens, I want to say, right, that played volleyball, right? And I tell you something, I felt like a dwarf. I really did. At 6 foot, there were girls there towering over me. And on the plane as well, on the way back this time around from Orlando to Dallas, there was a very tall fella sitting in the seat in front of me, and he asked me if he could come back. I said, "Might come back. You're huge. Of course you can." Like I'm leaning back in his seat, and we had a bit of a chat. And he was probably 7 foot something, and I've seen taller people than that yet. There's actually nothing really astounding about that, if you think about it, especially if the diet was good. If you've got the genetics already for being tall, and you've got a good diet, and make no mistake, the reasons that a lot of Asians are short is completely dietary. Over centuries, having eaten rice and fish and veggies, not so much red meat and so forth, you look at Asians that grew up in America, Europe, or Australia on Western diets, they're not just taller, but they're also broader and bigger. They fill out more, right? So there's a direct correlation between diet and physical size, including height. In fact, if you want your child to be tall, have the child swim from an early age. It will grow really tall. So I don't know why people are so, and I mean mainstream scientists here are so against this idea that there might be a race of giants. I don't think that's at all astounding. I think there might have been even taller individuals. That potentially even I'm just spitballing here, people in the vicinity of 10 to 15 feet tall, potentially, right? Again, why would we be so astounded? I mean, we know that species during the course of the evolution, if you believe in that, have changed in size dramatically. The shark that used to roam several, let's say 100 million years ago, 60 million years ago, time of dinosaurs.
Megalodon,
Megalodon, exactly. He's easily 10 to 15 or even 20 times larger than the largest shark today.
Well, in fact,
it's a fact. So why couldn't the same be true for? Yeah, go on.
No, in fact, they've got some footage of what they think is the megalodon already in the South Australian waters. So, the coelacanth all over again, Mickey, to be honest. But you're right. The question remains. It doesn't seem that it's not plausible. There certainly can be much taller people. I also was talking to and about. We went for a walk in the Walkabout Park, which is the Aboriginal ceremonial location. Is also a zoo of normal, Australian animals, just not far from me, Mickey. And there's a bunch of mondos. Remember at the Space Rock? Remember Space Rock?
Yes.
Okay, well,
yes.
there's a star field there with the moon, and the star field's all out there with all the mondos, which are representative of stars in the sky. And it's a circular carving in the rock. And the rock, Meki, just like the other site, was very... only the skin of the rock was solid, but inside it was like sand, remember? That just below the surface it was very sandy. Well, it's very similar to that at this site as well. And
yes, I do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of metallic rocks there that are sprayed from that huge impact near us of the iron meteor. Now,
right.
We were up there, and I was looking at this. It's once again another tableland, beautiful vista, lovely place. And there's medicine pools there, the medicine bowls, which are natural depressions in the rock, which are they would have mixed together. The local Aboriginals would have mixed together medicine. However, I was talking to, and the lovely lady there also knew the lady here, one of the elders who has recently passed away, sadly. But they're just about to release a book of the native language. And this lady who's been putting together, we're going to probably get on the show, and because it's the native Aboriginal language here, and this was like a highway joining a bunch of different areas, and this is from the far north coast of the state. People would walk down and meet up with this tribe and follow through down to the Hawkesbury or Windsor areas and down through Sydney. So, yeah, there's a lot of history here, Mackie. I'm just letting you know. And we're going to have one of the people on the show definitely talking about the origin of the history, and we can get to the bottom of the glyphs and the language and look for any similarities there in language as well.
Looking forward to that, my friend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really wanted you to be there when we were there the other day. Is there anything else? So I was going to say, that's right, the Aboriginals, their Dreamtime talks of when they got here between 40,000 and 75,000 years ago, there was already the little people living here.
Mm-hmm.
So before the regular-sized humans, when they arrived first, they found already the little people living here. So...
Yep.
And,
yep.
There's little people everywhere.
That's the thing is we've said this before, I'm going to say it again very quickly. Some time ago, probably maybe the Ice Age, maybe before, maybe 100,000 years ago, when we had the bottleneck with mitochondrial leaf, I don't know, but at some point the human or the human family tree was severely, I guess, pruned. Let's call it pruned, with major branches cut off. I think the human race was a lot more diverse in nature. Now we're not exactly clones of each other, such as cheetahs, for example. Mm-hmm. We certainly are quite similar, genetically speaking. And we firmly believe here at the Shiny Set Out that the diversity of the human experience was a much, much, much greater variety than we have today. There can be no doubt. The legends remember some of it. You have some physical evidence, okay? And the Aborigines, you have to remember one thing about Aborigines. And the important thing is that most of what they transmit down the ages is through stories. Not written down, but stories. Mm-hmm. So it's not, it's just from memory to memory. And the funny thing is this, especially if it's in a certain meter, so maybe it rhymes or it's, it's easy to speak, it will be remembered exactly over thousands of years. Mm-hmm. It will be remembered exactly over thousands of years. The memory that we use today is nothing compared to the memory training that people used to have in the olden days before we started to write things down. They memorized everything by rote. They knew it off by heart, and they didn't make mistakes. And if there was no one killed in the interim, or civilizations didn't, I guess, combust, that transmitted oral knowledge was kept clean. It was kept over thousands of years. Think about one thing. Think about fairy tales or even songs, lullabies. Do you know how old they really are? No, you do not. And no one really does. Because we only started writing that stuff down a couple of hundred years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how old it is. We have no idea. Right? The most common fairy tales you know about are the Grimm's fairy tales. Red Riding Hood, the brave tailor, blah blah blah, Snow White,
and the Hansel and Gretel.
In the 19th century, 18th, 19th century. Exactly, that's exactly right. So we don't know when these stories first came about. We don't know when they first entered the mythology of the people, and they would have been told, "I am humming." I think it's Brahms' Lullaby to my daughters, and I'm singing the song as well in German, right? And I remember it from my mother, and it's exactly how she sang it to me. It's not a very complex song. It's it's only a few stanzas. That's it, and the melody is very But that could conceivably be thousands of years old. I don't know, because that kind of transmission doesn't fade away.
No, Mekki, and I've got a good example for you as well.
When you're very young and things are being repeatedly told,
Mm-hmm. So a good example is ring a rosy, a pocket full of posy, a tissue, we all fall down. Mekki,
Cool.
I know you know what that is.
Yes.
That's the plague. That's what it was. You had the flowers in your pocket to get rid of the stench of death. Ring a rosy. It left rings, red rings on your skin when you were infected.
I do. And that goes back 600, actually 7, 8, is not. That's exactly right. And that's hundreds of years old, that rhyme. Nope.
Yes, so Mekki's right. What happens is when a rhyme is a metered phrase or rhyme, it'll last and it keeps its integrity. It's like error checking or error correction today in data. Mekki.
Yes, I completely agree. That's exactly right. And this particular iron that Dave mentioned is hundreds of years old. Right?
There's 8 clients connected, so radio settings. I'm just going to turn the darn thing off. Good luck with that.
That's not nice.
All right,
How's this now better?
Yeah, it's better. So what I'll do, Mekki, you just you go ahead and go through the intro and everything. And sorry for the listeners. Hopefully we can hang on. Okay. All right. And I'll mute Mekki, so I'll let you know when I'm back.
All right, guys. Okay, no worries. Right, yep, all good. Okay, look, guys, I hope you heard what I said thus far, but just to recap very quickly, in humans and animals, fear is modulated by the process of cognition, or processes of cognition and learning. Thus, fear is judged as rational or appropriate and irrational or inappropriate, right? And irrational fear is called a phobia, and that's how psychiatrists make their money. They tell us that we all have phobias. Psychologists such as John B. Watson, Robert Plutchik, and Paul Ekman have suggested that there's only small set of basic or innate emotions, and that fear is one of them. So it's right up there with instincts, right? So this is our basic programming. This is in the CMOS, okay, if you're a computer guy.